work hauling stuff in and out. Okay,
Right.
we are now streaming on Facebook. All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to be going officially live here in just a minute. I'm going to talk about some fun things. I'm just going to be sharing it. Yeah, there we go. Trying to share things on Facebook, I usually end up finding a bunch of baby goats in pajamas. Okay. All right, there we are. Okay, then we'll just be starting here in just a few minutes. Hope everybody's having a good day. Now here in Ukaipa, we are getting close to about 95 degrees here. It's got to be so beautiful where you are, Erica.
It's definitely cooler here than that. It's more Mediterranean climate, so it's definitely cooler. Probably like 75 right now or something. I'm not sure.
Nice. All right.
I'm in Berkeley. I feel like I should say that.
Yeah.
Folks who wonder.
Okay. And I have tagged you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. All right. So we'll get started in just 3 minutes, everyone. So you have a moment to grab a drink of water or whatever you're drinking right now. Or if you're watching this as a recording, you could be eating breakfast, I guess. See, I'm so smooth doing all this live stream stuff.
I'm honestly impressed. I really am.
Oh boy. All right, let's see who's watching with us. I can get on to our yeah, so many moving parts.
Can you see who's on Facebook or no?
Yeah, I'll see once I can find this stream. I will be able to see who's watching with us. If I could get there. Okay, there we are. All right. Turn it down. Okay, so yeah, I'll see when somebody pops on there. There's somebody watching, but I can't see who it is. So it's probably me. It's probably me because I have it on my phone. All right. Okay, just 1 more minute. Get ready for today. Light it up. Light it up. That's what I called it. I didn't realize what it meant until somebody told me later on. A millennial filled me in. But I still like it. Oh. All right. Yeah, the first time we did our live stream, and actually wouldn't go live at all. So we've learned a lot. We have learned a lot. And of course, Adam is making all of this possible, my son who is doing tech for us today. So if you're watching this on Facebook right now, you have my son Adam to thank for that. All right, now we are officially at 2 o'clock. So welcome to Light It Up Wednesdays, where we bring the joy and find the lessons so we can be the lights on the ground here. That's what we're doing. We're lighting it up right here where we are. Today, my special guest is astrologer, writer, and synchronicity guide Erica Evergreen. Erica's mantra is know thyself, and she definitely expresses that in the way that she is of service and sharing her gifts in this world. She sees the patterns of meaning that underlie all events. So one of her gifts is guiding us to see how the synchronicity is all around us and how to utilize that with our awareness. She'll soon be offering consultations through her new project, Meaning Garden, and we will provide the link for you for that in our comments. And it is in the Meaning Garden where she inspires others to tap into their powerful inner guidance and the patterns of synchronicity in their own lives. So today, we're going to be discussing astrology, synchronicity, and how life is a grand adventure of discovery and expression, even when it feels like things are not working out how you had hoped or how you had planned. So welcome, Erica. It is so good to have you here.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm so happy to be here. And I want to thank your church, also all of the folks that are listening or may one day listen to this. So thank you so much for allowing me into your space. I'm really honored. Thank you.
Well, we are honored. You're my favorite person to talk about astrology with, and synchronicities too, and just cosmic stuff in general. So I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Me too.
One of the things that I pulled off of your Meaning Garden website was you were talking about astrology. And in astrology, it says that love your true self, empower the world. And I thought that was so powerful because, well, what it sounds like is be authentic and you have more to offer the world. So is that like the gift that's in astrology for each person?
I would say yes. To me, your birth chart is your basic form. It tells you in obviously encoded language, but exactly who you are in potential. And then how you realize that depends on your artistic rendering of who you are. But the most important thing to me is by studying our own charts, we get to find out who we are, what are we working with, what colors are on our palette. And when we're authentically ourselves, rather than trying to please other people or be the person that we think someone else wants us to be, we're actually here expressing divinity. And to me, that's the most powerful thing. So it doesn't matter if you're famous, it doesn't matter if you're really wealthy, whatever it may be. If you are authentically yourself, that is wealth. That is the ultimate wealth that you're gifting the world with. And that to me is very exciting. That's why I love astrology.
That's why I love astrology too, just because of what you
Awesome.
just said. Now, we were chatting just a little bit before we went live, because one of the things that I am really fascinated with about astrology is that, I guess, like for myself, I've never seen how I could see ahead with astrology, but I can look at an astrological pattern that's just happened or is just behind us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. But you were saying something about 2020 in general is a big year astrologically, right?
Yes.
Is there anything you want to share with us about that?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of nuances. I tend to look at the bigger picture because that's what interests me. And one of the things that really struck me is that at the very end of this year, which is actually on the winter solstice as it happens, we're going to have a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Now, that in itself is not, that happens every couple of decades. But this one is the closest one since 1623. And it's in 0 degrees of Aquarius. And to me, that's very significant because Jupiter is talking about how we find our highest aspirations. We find divine guidance. That's what Jupiter stands for. And Saturn talks about basically our form. It can be on a positive side, our law, or how we should put things into practice on Earth. So when those two things come together in Aquarius, what that's saying to me is that in general, all of us are being asked to get our divine guidance or our highest values in order and put that into practice for humanity, because Aquarius is all about basically the divine. Each of us is divine, and knowing that we're all one in divinity. So that's like a huge deal coming up at the very end of this year. And it's also going to be conjunct Pluto. So that kind of gets more into how things are challenging, because even though it sounds very positive, and it is very positive that we're moving more into this age of Aquarius, or age of humanity, at the same time, change can be scary. When you're moving from one astrological age into another, that's a very large change. And as humans, we don't like change. Typically our egos are very uncomfortable. So
I know.
that.
I am sad about what happened to Pluto, man. That's messed up. I want Pluto to stay a planet.
Oh. Well, from an to me, it's going to always be one. I think it's really interesting because it's like Pluto is this gateway into the Kuiper belt. That's what they figured out, is that it's not, they were looking for a planet. It seemed like Pluto was the one that was making these changes, these movement changes on Uranus and on Saturn, or on Neptune, excuse me. And so they were looking for a planet X. They thought it was Pluto. And now they've discovered that that wasn't the planet they were looking for. But astrologically, it's a major synchronicity that we basically came into discovering this deeper part of our own soul or psyche at that time. So to me, astrologically, that you're never going to wipe away that synchronicity. Pluto is going to be significant for a long time to come. So I agree with you, but at the same time, I kind of don't care what astronomers are doing. I just care about I had to admit, like it's significant, but they moved on. That's okay. But I haven't moved on from Pluto. I love Pluto.
I love Pluto too. So what other little secret hidden aspects are there to Pluto that are at play in our life?
Well, Pluto is going to be also, it is already, will be, excuse me, conjunct these other two planets, Jupiter and Saturn. And Pluto is a planet, it's like the gateway really between our ordinary life and between the hidden world, or, you could call it the world of archetypes, you could call it the world of the divine forms. And basically, as you know, probably Pluto is the god of the underworld. So Pluto has a very terrifying face for a lot of us. In other words, a lot of times Plutonic events in our life, including this big thing that's happening to the whole world right now, but even in an individual's life, can be traumatic. It could be something very frightening and scary that really will never, that drags us down to the underworld, so to speak. But that confrontation with our illusions being changed or being taken away from us is an invitation to open up to the divine form. So oftentimes it can be transformed into a shamanic experience. And I think the whole world right now is being invited, so to speak, to have a shamanic experience, because with Pluto being conjunct the Saturn and Jupiter coming up here at the end of the year, it's like saying our old ways, it's in Capricorn. So what Capricorn is structure. And so it's like saying our old structures are needing to be let go of. There's a lot of things that have to shift that were appropriate to the old world that are now not appropriate. So, sort of like, that's terrifying, right? That's very scary to let go of old structures. But at the same time, that's where our power is. It's like actually inviting us into our divine. So I'm actually kind of excited about it, because on an individual level, we can look at it in our own charts. You can always say, where's this conjunction happening in my chart? You can always do it that way. If the whole world is too much for you, and for me it is, I don't deal with the whole world. I deal with my little piece of it, my divine. So I look at where is it going to be in my chart, and then I say, my activities in that realm, what that governs, are where I'm going to work on expressing the divine and really tapping into the archetypes as we're going into this Aquarian aeon.
Oh, okay. So I'll say that, okay, when the pandemic started, at first I was like, okay, yeah, I can deal with this for a couple weeks, no big deal. And I really thought we'd just be done and going back to our normal life. And then it was like a month, and then it was 2 months. And I went through this process of, well, I want it to go back to the way it was. But then I had to really face that within myself that was getting stuck in the conditions and not liking the conditions and being in resistance. Mm-hmm. And then I could move forward through that. And now I do feel a sense of excitement. Also a sense of let's do it. I won't quite say urgency, but like, I've got like, I'm ready to roll, like whatever that means. And so I find it just such an interesting synchronicity that you're saying that's kind of what Pluto is calling us into, like here at the end of the year. Like we're moving into something new, and the age of Aquarius is new, and focusing on humanity at large, and it's a lot of new stuff. Because Aquarius is the humanitarian, right? The visionary.
It is. And it's also, I think, to me, what it's about is taking a new level of responsibility for creating the world. So I think it's tough for folks because I think a lot of people, and I think it will continue this way for a while, unfortunately, is that a lot of people are still looking for authority figures, which is more Capricorn, and or and coming out of the Piscean age of basically where we had the beautiful image of the Christ figure as a one sort of like a beacon to guide us, which is great. But now it's like now I'll have to find that inner Christ. And that is a huge challenge. So I think that people are going to resist that. There's a lot of people who don't feel comfortable taking their power. They don't feel comfortable recognizing themselves as co-creators. And while that goes on, we're going to generate through that resistance. I think resistance is a great word. If we resist, and I think as a global situation we are, and I think in a lot of ways the pandemic is a result of resistance. Not it would be hard to trace the mechanisms of that. Maybe that's a pretty irresponsible thing to say, but I feel like the more that we resist as a species, the more trouble we're going to create for ourselves, because that's the way it is when you're having it. It's like when you actually die, when you actually pass physically from one realm into another, the more you resist that process, the more traumatic it is. But there's a beauty to passing into a new way of being. So in a way, it's like death. It's like a death because it's like letting go of a world in which there was dad and mom, so to speak. There was dad, especially, I suppose, telling us how to live and what to do and how we should live. And now we have to learn to grow up and take that on ourselves individually to really be responsible. And that's where the resistance is coming from. But I think people like yourself are leaders, so you're modeling for people how to be a light. Because if you're a light and you're comfortable in your own skin and you're going forward, and that's what I feel from you. I've always felt that you're very much a pioneer and just doing Deanna.
Oh, thanks.
Being that light. So that's what people, and everyone's got to be their own light. They don't want to do Deanna, they have to do themselves, whoever that is. And so then we can actually experience the excitement of, what, we're not going to, there really is no death. Death is an illusion. We're just passing into a new way of being. What is this? Who knows? It is exciting, and it's not scary. I feel like it's empowering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel a lot more empowered now, for sure, than just a couple of months ago.
Good.
Yeah, but I've been really busy, like
it takes
learning
work.
all this. Yeah,
it takes work.
Mm-hmm. It does. And okay, so one of the things I also saw on your website, meaninggarden.com, and we will again put that in the comments. You talk about utilizing synchronicity, like having awareness. And I know for myself, I used to think that synchronicity would happen once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was really lucky when it did happen. How would you say that it happens in your life?
Okay, so I think it's important to start where what you just said. So synchronicity, and even in when it was invented or when it was discovered by Carl Jung, that was something that happened once in a while, and it was like some weird coincidence that really turns out to have a great significance. And I think for me, when it's happened by accident, it could be something completely out of the blue, like just a bird flies by, but in some way I know that's not just a bird, it's actually answering a question that I had in my heart. And it's a message, but it's not because the bird is, out of the ordinary. It's just a bird, but it's just the way that it hits me. It's like a special moment for me in that moment. But what I'm trying to get at in my website is that synchronicity is actually constant. It's just that we're not looking at it. So the last thing that happens on planet Earth, in front of me, whether it's just a truck drives by that's a red truck or something, it doesn't matter. If I know how to, if I put my intent to read it as a synchronicity, it is one. Lo and behold, it really is, because there's basically the entire world is a book available for me to read at a moment, and because I'm constantly, everyone is, it's not just me, everybody, it's a normal thing. It's not special. Every one of us is constantly in the world of the divine at all times. It's just that we're so caught up in the conditions. I like that, the conditions.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. We're so caught up in the conditions that we lose touch. And all we have to do is literally stop and make the intent, ask, okay, you know, what is important right now? What should I pay attention to right now? I would suggest, personally making it something intimate. If you're, God, calling it God or angel or guide or whatever is your language. I don't think the language matters at all. I really don't think so. To talk constantly, to have that intimate relationship with the divine. And there's easier ways and harder ways, but if you just ask, you're going to get answers. And if you listen, if you pay attention, so that's why you just have to stop and ask the question and then really pay attention. And I always say record it. I believe in the power of writing, or it could be, painting. It doesn't really matter the medium, but I strongly believe that by continuing the conversation, just building on it, you can tap into synchronicity as much as you want. And I think it's balance between being on earth and being in the condition, and then tapping into the unconditioned, which is synchronicity.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, because if, like, in unity, we would say God is all things, that everything is an expression of that source energy.
Yes.
And so that means when you ask a question, everything around you is a potential channel for an answer.
That's right.
Everything is from the same energy.
Yes.
So I love that. I know for me, I have to just, I know the feeling of when it happens to me versus when I happen to it. And I'm like, okay, I want to know the answer to this question. And what I want the answer to be is this answer. And oh, look, I got the answer I wanted. Like, I do that.
So let me ask you this before I don't want to misinterpret what you're saying, because what I'm hearing you saying is there's a way to distort that process, because we have to be listeners, just like with a partner or a friend. Sometimes they say things we don't want to hear. So
right.
What you're saying is that there's an art to listening without imposing what you want to hear on the answer. Is that
right?
That is a challenge. And I think the more upset, and I know that's why they say don't read for yourself, although I do it all the time.
Yeah.
You're upset, right? If you're like really in pain about something, you're really upset or worried or something, you're really in that fear or mourning or something like that. It's hard to be objective. But that's why I think in some ways it's important to develop a relationship with something. Like, I like to have an icon. I like to have, I'm not going to get into my personal one because that's very sacred and personal to me, but to develop a God figure that you because then you can see it as not you. It is you ultimately, because we're all God. Right. But it's like a part of you, that the hidden part that you don't know the answers to. Mm-hmm. A lot of answers that I don't want to hear all the time. I mean, all the time, because I have a really reckless, kind of restless spirit that's always like off and running, and and it's like, I'm back to the center, and nope, we're going to do this for a while. I know you want to do all this other fun stuff, but let's just focus on this. It's tough. It's hard to listen.
It is. It does take practice, but I love it. I love seeing the world as like our oracle, I guess, that there's something meaningful. Like, I sat here the other day, and it was kind of funny because I'm up here a lot, but for the first time, I happened to be in the kitchen making myself some coffee. And I looked out the window, and because I always look out the windows here, I love to see what's happening, because there's a lot of wildlife. I mean, there's cars and stuff too, but I like to see what kind of birds are outside. And I saw this rabbit, and I was like, wow, that's so interesting. And then I came into my office, which is around then to the other side of the building. And I look out my window, and along comes the rabbit. And I was just like, oh, that's so interesting. And I hadn't really been asking anything, but I read into it that there was just, it was just participating more in my day than it usually would participate.
Mhm.
So that's how I saw it. I guess I didn't see it. I mean, I kind of felt like a synchronicity because it appeared again at a second window, but I didn't really have a message with it.
I think it's just, it's a balance. It's like, I think it's good to just live your life and then to balance it with synchronistic occurrences. And then how deeply you want to go into that is entirely up
Yeah.
to you. For me, it's like I actually look at reading synchronicity just like I look at dream interpretation. Sometimes I have a dream and the text of the dream doesn't seem that interesting, but if there's a lot of emotion there, I that's my cue to say, what, I figure if I'm feeling a lot of emotion in the dream, maybe there, or if something is really interesting, that's something intellectually or emotionally, or something is really striking, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to look into it. Then I might just like go on the internet and look up rabbit if I have a dream about a rabbit. I might look at myths about rabbits. I might count up the numerology of the word rabbit, and see what else it equals. I use all kinds of tools to try to figure out what could it mean. And sometimes a story that I wasn't expecting will unfold. And the thing is, do we always need stories? No. It's like, sometimes it's to drink your cup of coffee, right? So it's you get to be the artist. That's the thing. It's like you get to decide when you want, how deeply you want to go down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
Yeah.
And have fun with that. Or
Oh, the rabbit hole.
but the
Right.
rabbit came to you, the rabbit came out of the hole. So
Yeah. So then it came to me, something came to me. And I did end up having a phone conversation with someone yesterday. And she says, right now where you are at Unity, it is just fertile with some new possibilities. And
see?
I'm just now listening to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's kind of fertile with possibilities. We really are. There's just a
Yeah.
lot of amazing ideas happening right now, right here. So
Yeah, I mean, a rabbit is, if I could just riff off of that, a rabbit is a
sure.
fertility. And I personally associate, with the Easter myth and things, I associate it with spring, which is like new life and new growth. So it's like maybe that's what it is signifying on some level too, is that, with you at the center as the seed of Ukaipa, that there's new growth happening and you're sensing this possibility for your community. I mean, it just, you can go on and on, but I mean, that's the kind of thing, that's an example. And we're making these connections in a conversation. So which is why I like to converse, with the divine.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yay. Here we go. We're going. Now, so something else, and I'm just going to have you on here again in a couple months, like as we approach the fall, maybe. But
That would be great.
I was thinking about how we just went through 3 eclipses, right? And don't we have one on the winter solstice or around there somewhere? Like, I think we go through our next eclipse season around that time too.
Well, you've caught me embarrassed because I didn't look it up or something like that. So I don't know about that, but let's say that that's right. Is there something that you noticed about it?
Well, I always just really like eclipses. I don't know. Maybe I feel like a little more zingy with energy, but I know some people can actually get like an eclipse hangover, but I don't. I just dig them.
So you sounds like you feel energized when you have an eclipse?
I do. Yeah. And I think there's something about an eclipse that just charges us up, and it's like an extra zing of something to the planet, maybe for everybody. I don't know. I just think they're fun.
It's like, it's like the sun and the moon in communication at those moments, especially because either they're right together or they're apart from each other, opposite.
Yeah.
And so it's like that relationship between the sun and the moon, which, for us as a planet is, basically like mom and dad,
Right.
having a romantic evening, so to speak. And I think that's something that, it gives us all energy and
Mhm.
on an inner level as well.
Yeah.
Our soul and spirit kind of thing on an inner level.
Yeah. Now, something else that just pops into my head about Pluto is that we have these things, this conjunction happening at the winter solstice.
Mm-hmm.
And the winter time is traditionally like a time when the earth itself is kind of, well, where it's winter,
Yes.
kind of like the going within, everything seems to be doing nothing, but there's a lot of activity under the surface. And that feels like Pluto also, that there's the activity under the surface. And so that right now that's hitting me as, okay, Pluto and its activity happening in the wintertime. So that's kind of,
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, so for us in the northern hemisphere, that's the summer, or excuse me, the winter solstice,
yeah.
right? Summer in the south, but still in the north, what you're saying resonates. And Pluto is the god of the underworld, and there's that myth of Persephone being abducted and taken to the underworld, and then her mom, Demeter, who's the goddess of vegetation, says no more of this man, and she shuts the world down in wintertime. And then they negotiate a settlement to where the queen, now she's the queen of the underworld, and she comes back out again. So when Persephone's out again, then it's summertime. But in the meantime, the reason she's gonna take that role is she's eating the pomegranate seed in the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is something to be said for when it's like a question, or it's like a seed of an idea. When we ask a question, or when we seed something, like we begin something new, it's if we just let it grow under the earth. In other words, in our unconscious, then something else will come out later, and it's like on a global scale, like you're saying right now, for us in this world. So I think that it's also well to remember that Pluto is the god of wealth under the earth. And that symbol to me is I don't know why, but I'm very interested. I guess I love gems and I love metals and things like that. So that idea of like the wealth under the earth is so fascinating, because you can't get at the wealth unless you go into the dark. And so right now there's like crystals growing, so to speak, for all of us. And that's exciting to me. I like that too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, I love anything with crystals, but the idea of getting to go like within, it can feel scary at first if we think about it. Like if we look at it as going into a cave, but it's all us, and there is that crystal, there is that gem.
I guess that's one of the things I'm really hoping to maybe help the world with Meaning Garden, is that I really hope that over time, I mean, I realize it's not going to be an overnight process, but that we get to know the unknown part of ourselves, because most of us just think of ourselves as like the person we see in the mirror in the morning, the person on the mantle, photograph or something. But the truth is that we're actually the entire world. It's like every single one of us is a universe, and most of that universe is not seen even by us, by our ego. We don't notice it. And that to me is like to acknowledge that, hey, I am not just the person I know, I'm this other thing that doesn't have a name, that's huge and powerful. That to me, if we could get comfortable with that notion and kind of humble, because that means there's a lot about ourselves and about everyone that we meet that we don't. We're not just a surface. You're not just a pretty lady with glasses and plays guitar and inspires people. You're all that, but you're so much more that we can't even comprehend. And every one of us is. And let's get cozy with that notion that we're unknown. That's the part that I think is really, it's just so important, because we don't know everything. We need to move into not knowing.
Yeah, there's actually somebody outside the window here. But we're just getting ready to wrap it up. But this is an opportunity as we are going into this to like really discover more about like who we think we are. I mean, we being beyond what we think. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's very powerful, and that's very beautiful, and that's exciting, and it's scary, and it's out of our comfort zone, but we're totally 100% supported the entire time we're doing this work. Yes. Always.
Yes.
Always. So, all right. Well, Erica, I want to thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun.
I agree. Thank you so much. I would never have thought of this, and I'm so happy to be here. And so I've had a
Oh,
great time, and I'd love to talk with you again.
I would love that too. So, we're going to say goodbye to everybody on Facebook right now. All right. So,
Bye.
bye, everybody on Facebook. Adam, you can go
Thank
ahead and
you.
stop the live feed.